We are beautifully, melanated.
Hi, and welcome to another episode of Beautifully Melanated podcast. I'm Karen, and I'm here with my co-host.
I'm Kay, and we have a guest tonight who I will introduce later.
That's right. Thank you for that. And just to send Sarah's apologies, she is not feeling very well today. She is really poorly, and so is not able to be with us. Okay, Kay, over to you.
Yes, I'm going straight into what's in the world. And this week, we are going to talk about the cost of living crisis. So what in the world is going on with the price of food, petrol, living? So our guest, Jeffrey, is going to comment as well. Karen, I'm going to start with you. Have you been impacted? Have you noticed an impact?
Hell yes. This is ridiculous. Ridiculous. Yeah. I'm going to start off by saying the cost of my fuel bills. All right. So I pay for gas and electricity. They come out of a direct debit. They're monthly. I know that some people pay them quarterly, but I do mine direct debit monthly. It has increased by, I'm not sure what the percentage is, but it's gone up, I would say, about £350.
Good God.
Exactly. So I have written a very, very strong letter.
Right.
To explain that is completely and utterly unreasonable, and they will need to review because it's just insane. You know, I live at home with my children. It's not, we're not even in. We're not here.
Yeah.
So when we do get home, and to be fair, the weather's been quite mild, so I haven't had to turn my heating on every night. It's just on occasion when it's cold, I put it on, heat the house up, and then turn it down. I could never, ever, ever actually use the amount of fuel that they are charging me for. It would be impossible. At this point, I'm about to use a generator. I'm about to, have a bicycle tied up to something where I can actually generate my own kinetic energy. Because I mean, and I am a average earner, I guess. I'm not on the breadline. I cannot imagine families who, perhaps one person isn't earning, or I don't know, maybe they have other financial difficulties. It's just insane. You've got nurses going to food banks. That is crazy. What is happening to this country? So yes, I have been impacted. And I am just in shock. And I'm just so disgusted that the UK is in this situation, that the government has allowed this to happen. It's disgusting.
And they're still keying and skinning teeth as if, it's perfectly reasonable and rational to expect working class people to pay double, triple what their energy bill used to be. But speaking of the bread line, let's talk about literal bread. So food shopping, have you noticed the difference? Because gluten-free bread, honestly, thank God you're not celiac, because right now, I'm about to be skinny.
I hear that. So shopping's difficult, right? Because yes, I have noticed. I've gone to Tesco's and I don't know, I think it was like a basket, a few items in there. And I don't expect a basket to be like £60.
Right? Okay.
So it's not a trolley, it's a basket. Calm down.
It's a basket, yeah.
But food is something I can't scrimp on. That's not something that I can, we need to eat. So I try to be a little bit more frugal perhaps with what I'm buying, and I try to plan my meals a little bit more. But what can you do? It's food. I've gone to Aldi, Lidl, but in fairness, they don't stock everything that I need. So yes, I can get my staples, my meat, vegetables, things like that. And I happen to quite like Aldi and Lidl, to be fair, because meat tastes like meat, frankly. But The dry goods, not so much. They're just, the children don't take so much to the dry goods, and I can understand why. Yeah.
So are you getting your oxtail and curry goat in Aldi or Lidl?
Oxtail and curry? Very rarely do I buy oxtail and curry goat, to be fair, Kay. I'm not really eating red meat at the moment. Red meat is not agreeing with me, so I've kind of gone off that for a bit. But no, you can't get things like that. I'd have to go to the local halal butchers for that sort of thing. If I cooked it, I don't. But so you wouldn't get those sorts of things. But I mean, things like so baked beans, for example. Yeah. I only eat Heinz baked beans.
Ditto.
The others just don't taste good, and I'm not going to scrimp on something like that. I'm not going to buy cornflakes that isn't Kellogg's, because I'm just not going to. I think I go to work so that I can live. I don't live to go to work, and therefore that is the fruits of my labour. Come on, I must be able to buy Kellogg's cornflakes. So there are some things I don't want to compromise on. So those stores don't necessarily stock everything that I want. But, fruit, vegetables, I'm happy to buy things like that there, because, they taste the same wherever you get them from. And sometimes they even last longer, I find, than in some other stores. So I have no problem with things like that. But it's just crazy. I mean, petrol, just everything. And the thing is, our wages are not increasing to match this inflation. So I despair.
So any tips? Have you, I know you and I, and probably most of the diaspora, are not looking back at the old days when there was ice on the window inside and paraffin heaters, and we're not looking back with nostalgia at sufferation. Well, I'm not anyway. But are there any tips you have that you would like to share on how to reduce bills, minimize costs?
Okay, so I watched something recently, and they talked about people who have smart meters for their electricity can save money. There's like an incentive. So if you do your washing, I think like if you use a washing machine between the hours of 5 p.m. and 8 p.m., apparently it saves energy, and you'll be rewarded. I think there's some sort of monetary reward for people who are actively trying to, sort of reduce their usage. So that's something. If people are happy to have smart meters fitted, the fact that there's a reward might be an incentive. I would say things like, to be fair, I don't waste food anyway. Very, very rarely do I have any food that I throw away at the end of the week from my fridge. I tend to use most things. I guess cutting back on wastage. So if you plan your meals, perhaps that might help. So you're not sort of just overbuying. There was a time where if I had forgotten to defrost something, I'd just go and buy something else. Yeah. I tend not to do that anymore. I try to make sure I remember to defrost whatever it is I want to cook that day. But I don't know. I don't know if we can really escape it. I mean, what else can you do? Because if my fuel bill has gone up, I don't know. It's tripled, right? Which is ridiculous. And so I feel powerless really to do anything about that. I don't think it's as a result of my spending or my usage. I think it's just as a result of, what's happening right now. So I don't know. Do you have any tips on how to save or?
No, because I was already, I think, frugal with my bills. There's some things I will not compromise on. Good coffee is one of them. Okay. I'm celiac and dairy intolerant, so my food bill was pretty much double what everybody else was paying anyway, but now it's just ridiculous. So I have heard tips, and my position is this, Karen. I am not going to participate in the anxiety and the stress. When I get the money, they'll get the money. So with my energy, I've cancelled my direct debit. I cancelled it in September. So you're not going in and helping yourself. And I submit a meter reading each month, and then they generate me a bill. So yeah, it's shot up by quite a lot. Probably by £100 or so already, and we're not in the worst of winter. So they can email me all they like to tell me it's outstanding. When I get it, you will get it. Because I could stress myself into illness and early death, trying to, adjust because politicians are making decisions that is intended to almost dehumanize us. So one tip I did get, which I did try, was to, when you boil your kettle in the morning, fill up a flask. Fill up your thermos, fill up a flask, and then for the next maybe 2 or 3 cups of tea, you pour from the flask. So you're saving boiling the kettle. And while that's fine, it pisses me off. Sorry, language. Because I'm like, come on. I'm not home between 5 and 8, by the way, to put my machine on. So that's a non-starter for me. I'm at work. And secondly, at this big old age, I have to be scrimping and saving like we're in wartime.
Crazy. It's crazy.
I'm not doing it. Yeah. So I don't know what's going to become of me, but I'm not participating. I'm not changing way too much about my lifestyle. We'll see. Check with me in 2 months.
And I completely agree, because actually I'm not stressed. Like I said, I wrote a letter and just said, this is ridiculous. On principle, I'm not paying it. Yeah. So I have stopped my direct debit and I've given them what I think is a reasonable amount, which is what I was paying in the first place.
Yeah.
Because my usage is the same.
Yeah. And they are making billions in profits. It is not like they are struggling. They are reporting record profits. Billions.
It's not as if I'm using more than I had been. I'm using the same. So why would I pay 3 times what I was paying for the same usage? So yeah, as I said, written a letter, I've stopped my direct debit. The bank said, actually, that's a better idea, because then you are not prone to adverse credit because there isn't a direct debit. So I will pay them what I have.
Yeah.
And I actually tried to call them, and the calls are diverted to Citizen Advice Bureau.
Interesting.
I was like, I don't need advice. I need you to stop taking that money.
Yes.
I don't need help.
When it comes to the whole not turning your heater on, get out of here. That heater is going on when I'm cold. Are you joking me? I am not putting on 6 layers indoors and having my face being cold. I'll be warm. I'm going to be warm and I'm going to eat.
What can you do? I mean, seriously.
Exactly.
We just have to. And like you, I'm not going to stress about it. I don't feel stressed at all. I really don't. I mean, if everybody took that attitude and nobody paid it, what would they do? Take us all to court?
Exactly. Take us all to court. And even then, what's the judge going to do? Make money out of nothing?
Exactly.
Exactly. You get £1 a month, because that's what you would get if we had to come up with a payment plan. £1 a month so I can live. So I'm going to bring in Jeffrey, our lovely guest. And Jeffrey, you won't have these problems. You are actually in Jamaica. You are warm already. But are you feeling the cost of living crisis in other ways?
Well, firstly, good night, guys. Thanks for having me on the podcast.
Good night.
The cost of living. Well, where does this story start? Firstly, on average, the monthly income of a Jamaican would pale in comparison to a lot of other countries, even in the region. So we're talking about people who would normally have a hard time making ends meet, not to mention the recent increases that we're all seeing, as you guys are talking about. So I don't know if it's the after effects or the tail end of the COVID economic storm or whatever, but the prices are going up everywhere. So our utility bills, for instance, I think this month it was about a 20% increase, roughly, in 1 month on an electricity bill that I think should go down, because I've been home less since the last month than before. So I don't know. I don't understand why that's happening, really. They try to justify it as much as they can, as big multinationals will do. They'll justify this and that. But at the end of the day, the prices, they just don't really make sense. The cost of buying food. And I agree with you, Karen. I don't think I should have to skimp on food. I mean, I need that literally to live.
Yes.
Why should I have to give some of my money to somebody else so that I can live a little less? That doesn't work out for me. So I'm gonna still buy food. I have to eat. I'm still gonna do all of my necessities. I'll take care of all that stuff. But at the end of the day, the pressure that falls on the shoulders of everyone, it's unbelievable. I see it everywhere I go on a day to day, especially for persons who are out there on the street asking for a handout. Can you help me here? Can you help me there? Could you help me with some taxi fare? Could you help me with some bus fare? Because I went to work today and I just didn't get paid. I don't know how I'm gonna get back home to my family. Could you help me to buy some lunch today? Like, I see this. It's getting really bad. Like it was always there. I mean, it's not like we're all well off before, but it's definitely getting far worse. I think, as always, our government have some control over this. They have things that they can do.
Yeah.
Certain programs or services that they divert so much of their yearly budgets towards that in reality, I don't really see how it helps the most important persons involved, your citizens, your people should be well taken care of. And I was actually a little surprised to hear this from you guys, seeing that, you're in the UK. I just figured everything would be so much easier there. You would have this and that, and you would have manna falling from the sky and whatever.
Yeah.
And
a common misconception, Jeffrey. Yes.
Yes, I really feel humbled by the fact that, no matter where you are, you're going to feel the pinch. You're definitely going to feel it. The stuff that I've been doing, I haven't really changed much because I'm just going to keep doing what I do. I have to, as I said, I have to eat. I have to travel around. I have to do these things. So I'm not about to start changing the way I do things just so I can put a couple extra $1,000 or in your case, a couple hundreds of pounds more into a big company's pocket.
Right.
It just doesn't feel right to me. It doesn't sit right. So as you said, the notices will come and they'll sit there in my email and I'll see them. We'll see them and we'll just say, okay, when we get to it, we get to it.
Absolutely.
We'll
the only thing that falls from the sky on us here, Jeffrey, is snow and racism.
Yeah.
In generous doses.
The racism falls.
Oh my God. Saturated with it. But no, it's hard everywhere. You mentioned the average salary for Jamaicans. As a rough guide, and this could really be speculative, what are we talking in terms of numbers?
The minimum wage out here now is $7,700 per week. So we're looking at around 7.3s. We're looking at around $29,000, which would be like £180, £170.
For the month?
For the month. So that is what a vast majority of our population is surviving off of each month. And mean, they have kids.
Wow.
And when I say kids, I mean, some of these people, they have 3-4 kids to take care of and they need to send them to school. They have to send themselves to work for this nothing, send themselves to work for taxi fare, because that's basically what it is. And somehow they have to find a way to make it work. And, Jamaican people are really resilient, and they have this thing that we say out here, of the saying that says, Tony Hannah make fashion. I don't know. I don't know how they're doing that with that much money every month, but they make it work. We make it work. And that's really all it boils down to at the end of the month for a lot of persons, like $29,000, 180 pounds.
My God, I spent more than that in the supermarket in Jamaica recently.
Yeah, Yeah.
One trip. One trip.
And that's literally,
What, Jeffrey, rent? Or, I don't know how housing works. Obviously, if you've bought your house, you've built your house, that's different. But so would that have to cover things like rent?
For the vast majority of Jamaicans, we're either renting, squatting, or living with a family member. I don't remember the exact percentage, but I remember NHT, which is the National Housing Trust. It's like a body of the government that's in charge of housing. Their entire policy, their whole framework is about housing, making affordable housing for Jamaicans. And they had issued some numbers the other day. I can't remember off the top of my head, but it spoke to Jamaicans who actually own their own homes.
Mm-hmm.
And don't get me wrong here, or don't quote me on this, but I believe it was like less than 20% of all Jamaicans own their own home.
Really?
Like have the name on the title. So home ownership out here it's not something that's an option for a lot of people. Because as we said, we're talking about 29,000 Jamaican dollars each month for pay.
Mm-hmm.
So when does that translate to let me do a contribution to the housing development? Let me find a way where I can get a mortgage. It's just not possible for a lot of people. So
I'm surprised. That's really shocked me. I thought the number would be far higher than that, to be honest.
Me too.
It's a really low number. I'm going to go back and check because I like to fact check, but I believe it was something like that because it was really like shocking to me to find out that basically nobody owns a home.
That is shocking to me as well because, like I said, I just came back last week, and the amount of beautiful houses I see going up in Jamaica, massive structures. Are they belonging to us here in England and the US and Canada? Who are building those mansions?
You see, that's the thing. There are people here with money.
Of course.
I think Jamaica has one of the biggest disparities I've ever seen in terms of wealth to poverty.
Mm-hmm.
And, the world has its top 1%ers, but Jamaica also has that elite class of persons who can afford to build themselves a nice home, multiple homes actually, and they can get into real estate developing, and they have apartment buildings, they have condominiums and plazas and malls. Mm-hmm. And the names they're just the same names that keep repeating, that the same list of families that can afford to do this kind of thing. Yeah. And there are some other persons who do find a way out of the rat race out here, and they find some means of achieving a higher level of income, and they'll build a home for themselves. And that would be what they call a forever home. So they will spend their money on embellishments, and they'll make it look really nice, and they'll build a fence around that thing higher than the wall of China. They'll spend money on it, and it will be their single most largest investment in their entire lives, and that's where they'll be forever. So there are persons out there who can do it, but for the vast majority, it's just not an option. We're talking about people who will rent their homes for 30, 40, 50 years, just rent this spot. For one, my grandmother, she passed away a few years ago. She got a lease agreement. She was working with the family of this ambassador's family. I can't remember, some Central American ambassador. And she was working with them since the early 50s. That's when they started working, and she managed to get a lease through them. They assisted her, and she got a place to live in Kingston.
Right.
And that's what started her family. And this is early 50s, going towards 60s. And the lease on that land expired about 3 years ago. And she passed away right before the lease expired. And then my aunt, her daughter, now had to figure out, okay, where am I going to go now? Because they've been living on this lease land for, 50 years.
Yeah.
They don't have a home that they own. The persons that own the land right out or rightfully, they decided that they wanted to just knock it over and build this apartment complex, because in that area, that's what's making money, apartment complexes. So that's what they were gonna do. And they had to go through court, and they fought tooth and nail to hold on to the place for a little longer. So now they're trying to find some other arrangements. Her sons, my aunt's sons and my cousins, they're much older now. I mean, they're fully grown up, and they've moved out, and now they're renting their own places. So now they're trying to come together as a family and try and figure out what they're going to do. Are they going to all move to another rented spot, or are they going to, I don't know, buy a piece of land somewhere, try to start the home, whatever? But it happens. It happens. Just don't get over that hurdle and purchase or own their own place.
I was going to say, actually, a lot of houses, well, I'll talk for my family, are inherited. So, for example, my grandparents had a house. They've passed now, but the house belongs to my mother. So she rents it. She's not making huge amounts. The family that are in there on a very, very modest salary, as Jeffrey mentioned. Lady's got children. My mum, like I say, is charging, but it's very, very minimal. However, if my mum ever decided that actually she wants the house back, or she wants to give it to myself or my sister, this family would have to leave, and they've been there for years. So it's pretty much like what you've just said. That is really, really common. And, there are lots of people from the US, from this country, who do have homes in Jamaica, and they either rent them out or they use them for holiday lets. It's I do see that. I do understand what you're saying. I guess it's quite common. And I don't know, how do Jamaicans change that when they're on such small salaries?
For this generation particularly, because I'm also of an inherited situation too, where my father has land, my mother had land, it passed down. But for those whose parents never owned land initially,
exactly,
they then are faced with this astronomical cost to buy land and then to build on it on a very, very minor salary. It kind of makes me think maybe that's why the crime rate is so high, because that is just frustrating.
Naturally, it's going to have a lot to do with that. There are opportunities that are coming up, and I think persons, or you would call them Gen Z, the Gen Z and millennials are definitely changing that paradigm. They're doing a lot more in terms of finding different ways to make money. They're finding multiple streams of income to be a commonplace thing now. It's definitely changing. I see where that movement is happening. A friend of mine, actually, who we graduated from high school at the same time, he bought his first home just, I think, 2-3 weeks ago. So I was extremely proud of him to see that, he did it. He did what a lot of persons have not been able to do. Something that people 2-3 times his age still can't manage to do.
They can't do.
And and he's just 25, and he did that a couple of weeks ago, and he's very proud of himself as well. But one of his main ways of making money is income. He does forex trading. He does forex trading on the side. He's also investing in the stock market through a brokerage, and he has a 9-to-5. He just finds any way possible to make extra money, and he's gonna turn it somehow into something that will generate even more money. So he's all about residual income. And this is something that it's mostly like a millennial and a Gen Z thing. I feel like the older generations, they were more about being loyal and sticking to one company, sticking to this one business. And this is where I work. This is what I do. I work at the bakery. I'm a baker, and I'm going to stay here until I die. And they're just so dedicated to this one thing. and they never really. I guess they're too comfortable. I guess I would say we get too comfortable sometimes, and that getting comfortable, it makes us complacent. We don't really try and do anything else.
Do you think I completely agree with that, but do you think it's also a lack of confidence? I think for, a certain generation of people, it's that confidence, isn't it? To be able to say, I can leave the bakery. I don't need to do this. I can do something else. I think for lots of people, they just haven't had that sort of confidence in themselves that the new millennials, I think, have.
That's true.
Yeah,
that's true. Definitely. Yeah, the confidence does have a lot to do with it. I guess we're naive. We don't really believe that we can fail. So like, why not try?
Yeah, true.
we have that level of naivety. We're like, what's the worst that could happen? So we go out there and we take more risks, and of course, we have greater rewards. So I said bakery. Not really so much as an random example. It's kind of targeted somehow. I said bakery, and then I remembered that there's this person. I think he's in his 90s now, and he was rewarded the other day from a local bakery in Spaldings, which is northern Manchester, going towards the border of Trelawney. He was the driver for the bakery truck for 45 years straight.
Wow.
He did nothing else but drive the bakery's truck. So he was a driver for that truck when the owner's dad started the bakery until the owner died, and now the son is the owner of the bakery. And he actually passed away not too long ago, and he was still the driver for the bakery. I think he was like 45, 46 years being the driver. And he is now retired against his will because he didn't think that he needed to retire. 90-something years old. It's like,
what?
I can work some more. To be fair, he does. He has all of his faculties still. He remembers everybody. He can still drive. He walks around, takes his morning walk. Sometimes when I go to that community, I see him just walking around the place, saying hi to people. And I realize that this is the reason why a lot of people they never explore. They never go any further than where they are. They're comfortable doing what they do.
I was going to say, is there a simplicity of lifestyle? Maybe.
There's also that. I trust me. I have nothing bad to say about people who do that. I mean, to each his own. If you prefer a simpler life, if you prefer a slower paced environment, you don't really have the aspirations to see it all and do it all and take over the world. You just want to do what you do and take it easy. I mean, power to you. You're doing what you love to do. But for the persons who don't really do it by choice, they just never do anything else. It's not for the love of doing it. As Karen said, maybe they just didn't have the confidence to try something else, or maybe they're afraid of failing. They go somewhere else and they just don't want to relearn anything because they already know what they know. So why do something else?
Yeah.
And it's sad. It's sad. But I believe my generation is turning that around. Slowly but surely, we're making a difference on that.
Yeah, I would agree. I see the difference.
Yeah.
So any tips, Jeffrey, before we get into the body of the podcast, any cost-saving tips from you for those who are feeling the pinch and maybe have always felt the pinch?
One thing I might say, all right, if you have any subscriptions that you don't need, you don't need Hulu and Netflix and Amazon Video and Disney Plus
and
all
Disney
at the
Plus.
same time.
I think I do, Jeffrey. I actually think I do.
I don't know about that. I'm not so sure, Karen. I don't know if you need all of them at the same time. Oh boy!
I have cancelled Sky Sports, and I never thought I could ever cancel my sports That was like eating to me.
Oh,
I've
wow.
cancelled it. I've cancelled Amazon Prime. I have cancelled Disney Plus, and I'm left with Netflix. Sad times.
I know that was really hard for you, kid.
Oh,
I know you love your sports. I know you love to watch your football.
Right?
I know that about you. Love your football.
I love my football. There was a time when I'd rather not eat than lose my sports subscription, but I'm trying something new. I'm trying to be adult.
yeah. But yeah, that's really it. If you have any things that you indulge in normally, like subscriptions, I know a lot of people, they like to go out to eat. They're not really stay at home and make a nice meal kind of people. They would prefer to go out and go to a restaurant or get fast food every single day. That stuff kind of adds up. It definitely adds up at the end of the week when you realize that, in Jamaica at least, all that I've made for this week, I'm just going to have to keep it to buy food for next week, because all I can eat every day is KFC and Burger King. And then I go home to my Disney Plus and Amazon videos, and I starve throughout the night. So, maybe cut back a little on that.
Yeah. So basically, if you're poor, you can't have nice things.
You definitely should. you should definitely afford yourselves all of the nice things in life. But as the word suggests, afford. If it just isn't there for you, then just keep your living costs as low as possible. Don't starve yourself. As we've been saying, you have to eat. So eat. Maybe not fast food all the time, but necessities.
Okay, I totally agree. But yesterday I was in the house, I looked at my nails, right? And I said, do I need to get my nails done? I was like, could I save this, 20 odd quid, whatever it is? I said, hell no, I want to do my nails. Is that something? No.
I didn't think that's what you were going to say. I thought you were going to say, and then I decided to paint them myself. Or something.
No.
I made an appointment. And I went because they are the fruits of my labor.
Yes.
They are, honestly, I think to myself, I work very hard. I'm good at what I do, and I work very hard, and I love my job. I'm very fortunate. And like I say, I'm a professional person, therefore, my salary reflects that. But I'm not going to scrape and scrimp on things that give me joy and pleasure. I'm going to do my hair. I'm going to do my nails. And if I want a bottle of Prosecco, I'm going to buy it.
Oh, yes. I am not scrimping on my whiskey and rum. I can't even raw dog life anymore. Refuse. Not possible.
Not possible. Nope.
Nope. I will miss the nails, though.
That probably has a lot more to do with your psychology than anything else. Your nails and your hair, they're attached to you, not only physically, but it's also a part of who you are. And I feel like that's one of those things you really shouldn't scrimp on. I mean, getting your nails done and feeling your truest self, feeling your best. I mean, you have to do that? Do you, girl? Do you?
Jeffrey, I intend to.
Oh, brilliant.
It's so important, because I think self-care is really important. Okay, I could have painted my nails myself. Of course I could have. And it would have cost me a fraction of what it costs. But however, sitting there and having somebody else do something for you is actually really pleasurable. It's really nice. And I just think mental health is huge, all right? We are in the business of mental health. And yes, I go for walks. I don't have a gym subscription. Because I probably wouldn't use it. And so I save money in that way. However, I still think you've got to have time for you. You've got to do nice things for yourself. And I think you've got to be realistic about what things you can get rid of. And I'm not suggesting that we're wasteful. That's not what I'm saying. But you still have to live, I think we're all in agreement with that.
Yeah, And that's actually quite a nice segue, Karen, into our topic for this week, which is the continuation of our series on mental health. Because when you start to have to give everything up that brings you joy, your mental health will decline
100%.
quite significantly. Yeah. So I think it's time I formally introduce Jeffrey, or Jeff as I'm going to call him. So let me introduce you to the listeners, Jeff. And I hope I get your surname right. Jeffrey Smikle?
Correct.
Wonderful. So Jeffrey was born and raised in the cool hills of Christiana, Manchester. He studied business management and other related studies that led directly to the start of his first full-fledged business enterprise at age 19. And he is still in this role. He is now the Chief Technical Officer. His core tenets in life are respect at all times, family first, and never relent on the quest for knowledge. So, Jeffrey, I have the honor of knowing you personally, and you're a part of our family, and that I hope never changes. I've always been impressed by you, by your approach to life, your outlook, your core values. I'm also impressed by the way in which you embrace all aspects of yourself, including the feminine. And no, listeners, if you look at him, you wouldn't think he's feminine. He's gorgeous. But he does embrace that side of himself as well. So we would love to talk to you tonight about mental health in our community, specifically the Black Caribbean community. And I'm glad you've joined us. I'm going to lead off with my very first question. Born and raised in Jamaica, what has been your understanding of mental ill health growing up?
Wow. In the context of Jamaica and mental health, there is nothing that I can say that I was told as a child that this is the way things can be. This is the way things should be as it relates to mental health. It was always a topic that was taboo. You don't really talk about it. It's not something you should concern yourself with. If you see someone going through a mental health crisis, you just kind of ignore them. It's sad to say, but that's just how it is, especially in Jamaica. You brush that aside. If you have a member in the family who's going through a situation, you're not gonna completely abandon them, but you're no longer gonna look at them the same way. You don't embrace them in the family the same way you did before. You kind of shun them in a sense. You might give them what they need. You might still feed them. If they have a doctor's appointment, if you need to call a mental health professional for them, you might do that. But you just kind of ignore it. And I don't know why. I don't know if it's a case where we thought that it would just go away if you don't pay any attention to it. It just, it magically stops. So there are no guidelines. There's no proper procedure that we're taught growing up in Jamaica as it relates to mental health. Man don't cry, man don't feel nothing, and woman cry, and woman just, you just hush woman, and you don't even hush a boy, baby. You can't hush a boy. No, you're gonna make him grow up to be a sissy. He might go soft, and if him drop and hurt himself, you just say, well, stop the crying and get up. Brush that off. You're all right. And if it's a little girl, you take your little girl up and you say, I'm so sorry, hush, princess, hush, you'll be okay. So, even more than just mental health in Jamaica, it is mental health and mental health expectations of men or Black men. Everyone expects you to just be okay. Nobody expects you to feel anything, really. There's no emotional concern. There's no emotional care. There's no question of, are you okay today? No. Right. You're a man. You're supposed to always be okay.
Except that's not possible.
It's not possible. Of course it's not possible.
So it's very gendered. Possible. Even as young as toddler, you're saying is gendered in that the boy babies, if they fall over, get up, come on, get on with it. But if it's a girl, she can have some nurture and comfort.
Yeah, you have to comfort her because she's a little girl.
Right.
And then after you pass that toddler stage and you're approaching adolescenthood, you're kind of the treatment kind of shifts back to the same thing. You're a big enough girl now. You're fine. So what are you crying for now? What could possibly be wrong with you? You know, I take, this is from the parents' point of view. I take care of you. I send you to school. I feed you. What do you have to be upset about? What could you possibly be sad about? What problems can you face? Are you paying the bills here?
Yeah.
You know, that's basically it. You're not paying for the rent. You're not paying for the mortgage. You don't have to do these things. Why do you feel that we need to put ourselves out of our way to think about your mental well-being? That's not possible. So I think I just framed it enough. That is the entire consideration for mental health in Jamaica.
I think you honestly framed that so well, because that too is my experience of when I have visited Jamaica and family members who've come from Jamaica. So I was born in this country, but obviously my family are from Jamaica. And everything that you've said completely resonated with me. And actually, I work with children whose families are from other countries, Jamaica, West African countries, and that is still the same sentiment. Like you say, because they're not paying rent, they don't have a mortgage, they're in this country, what could possibly be wrong with them? You know, but I do not think for me, it's the ignorance, isn't it? It's a lack of education. It's a lack of information that I think these people have just not had access to. I think it goes back to something that Kay and I talked about before on this podcast. People tend to parent the way in which they were parented. And so, you know, the saga continues, isn't it? So I've got, there are people I know who are raised in Jamaica, who have undergone, in this country, it would be abuse. You know, they call it beaten, but they'd go to jail if they were here. It's just, unfathomable abuse, really. You know, you couldn't, it's under the guise of discipline, but it really isn't, right? And I think that has been hugely impactful on kids who then turn into adults, who then have children, right? So I think it's a systemic, it's kind of, I don't know, it's inherited behavior, I don't know. But in order to sort of approach first the stigma attached to mental health in places like Jamaica, so we've still got stigma here, let alone in Jamaica. I think that's one thing. But even just to raise awareness, have conversation, the conversation we're having now, I'm so glad that we're having it. And I'm so glad that you're on this podcast, because I just think it's an absolute lack of information. I just think so many people are ignorant to it. Would you agree?
I completely agree. It's one, lack of information, as you said. And for those, a lot of times, who can do better, they just kind of choose not to, because of that same, I will do what I was taught by my parents. Why should I do it any differently? You know, this is what I know. And even from our conversation before, you know, that's one of the biggest hindrances to development, whether it be mental development, developing your economic situation. Why do I have to change? This is how I saw it. This is how it was. Why can't I just keep doing what I know? And it's really sad that this is what we have to deal with. Just a lot of times, people who don't really care. They're just trying to go through life with the basics of what they were taught as kids from their parents. And they just keep repeating the same cycle over and over again. They just regurgitate the same behavior.
Absolutely.
And that's why,
a good point. Yeah.
There's no systemic change. There's no change that will start to, there's no real catalyst to change here.
No.
So it's kind of up to persons like us. You guys are the professionals, or I'm just somebody who cares about mental health, to try and do what we can where we can to see what we can to see how we can assist persons. For me.
So sorry, Jeffrey. I thought you were finished there.
No, I was. Go ahead.
No, finish, please.
Oh, I was gonna say, for me, in terms of assisting or helping somebody or helping yourself, it doesn't really have to be anything big. Just very, very small things matter. Just seeing somebody and saying, "Are you okay? Are you genuinely okay?" I find that makes a world of a difference, and a lot of persons will start to open up to me just with that one sentence, even if I'm not prepared for it. A lot of times I'm not, because I'm telling you, people have some stories to tell sometimes, and you're just concerned, and you're saying, "Are you okay? Do you want to talk to someone?" And they just release, and those tiny things, just a few words, can make a really big difference.
I was thinking of the system that brought us here. If we look at the context of our history and the system that brought us here to the Caribbean, that system is what we're still repeating. So we were enslaved, we were trafficked, brought to the Caribbean to work. Average lifespan of a slave was 8 years. And so in those 8 years, if they had children, they couldn't own them. They belonged to the slave master. So you didn't get to own your children. So that's one thing. Then the other thing is they were beaten. So there were lots of abuse and beating. Karen rightly said it is abuse. The men would get beaten by the slave masters. The men would then beat the women. The women would then beat the children. And when the children got old enough, they became the men and the women who got beaten and were beaten. And in the structure for a psyche, it doesn't feel like much has changed. It's what's passed down. Generation to generation to generation. And of course, in terms of emotional affect, how much could they show? They were in survival mode. So you had to hold in your feelings. They didn't count because you weren't seen as human. You were dehumanized. So if your slave master is beating you, you're still expected to be respectful to them. And whatever you felt, you couldn't express it. So that's also passed down, in that you withhold your emotional affect or your emotional responses to things that happen to you. Because in real terms, us three here talking tonight, if someone were to come and invade and enslave us and beat the crap out of us, we would have a response, wouldn't we? If our kids were taken from us, we would have a response. If our children were beaten and raped and victimized in front of us, we would want to scream and have a reaction. But our ancestors could not, for their survival. And it feels like we're still in survival mode. It's like we haven't realized that we can come out of survival mode and thrive. We can live now. We can show our feelings. We can be community and family again. We're not owned. And interestingly, Jeffrey, you mentioned earlier on about the families, the same maybe 6 families who own pretty much everything in Jamaica in terms of industry. Their ancestors were the slave owners. And so generational wealth was passed to them. And some of them is earned. But yeah, if you look at the Chens, for instance, come on, that's generational wealth. It's there. So we are repeating something that has been passed down that we need to let go of. We can now step out of survival mode. But my thoughts as to why we haven't is religion. And religion has a chokehold on the island. And we have as many churches as anywhere else, yet the volatility is increasing. The violence towards each other is on the increase. But for me, growing up, mental health was only ever seen in the context of church. And you need to pray. Or you might go for anointing. or they might tell you to fast and pray, or pray for God to heal, when you clearly need to see a psychotherapist or a therapist or a psychiatrist or a psychologist or some form of therapy. Prayer was always given as the broad scale solution to everything. So if we're keeping one system, it needs one other system to keep that system going. And for me, religion keeps that slavery mentality going. Karen?
For sure.
I was going to ask, are counselors, psychotherapists, therapists, are they readily available in Jamaica? Are they accessible to the public, people on sort of limited incomes? Are they accessible?
And it's funny that Kay said that, mentioned religion in that context, because a lot of the mental health professionals, quote unquote, or counselors that are available are religious based. So the advice that's going to be given is essentially what Kay just said. You need to pray. You need to get a closer relationship to God in order to overcome your mental health adversity, which doesn't make any sense. How can you tell somebody? How can you be counseling someone who is obviously going through a really, really tough time, whether it be a severely traumatic experience, some mental health breakdown, and the advice that's given is around religion, that you need to come into church and help. Let us help you. How is religion going to help somebody in that context?
And that's so inappropriate.
It's very inappropriate to just assume that somebody will just absorb your religion as their own. And it doesn't even make sense, because I've had family members who are going through a tough time and they needed to see a mental health professional, and they searched around, they were trying to find any type of mental health professional, really. And they were given contact information for somebody that works with the Seventh-day Adventist Union. And there we go again, right back into religion as a means of healing mental health problems.
All right, I'm going to be devil's advocate here, right? I'm going to say that I think for some people, it can act as some form of comfort, right? Can it take the place of therapy? No, I don't think it can. But I think you can. I think religion itself is not the cure, but having a faith can be comforting to some people. All right. So I need to put that out there. I think that, having a healthcare professional is something quite different. But I don't want to sort of get the impression that, or give the impression rather, that I think that having faith is not helpful. Yeah. Does it take the place of medication? Of course not. And in some cases, medication might be necessary. So the two can exist. The two can work alongside each other. But I don't think, just religion on its own. Yeah, it does sound crazy, doesn't it? You're going through whatever trauma, just pray it away. No, that doesn't work. But the other thing I was going to say, apart from religion, I think another contributing factor is poverty. I think poverty plays a huge role in poor mental health. And I think that things like abuse, witnessing domestic violence, all these things are ACEs, as we know them to be, Kay, don't we?
Yeah, adverse childhood experiences.
And those things contribute. And the more ACEs that a person experiences, the more likely they are to suffer with poor mental health going into adulthood. So I do think that poverty is a huge problem.
Yeah, it is a problem. But also, Karen, my question back to you, interesting, you said you're going to play devil's advocate, or we're talking about religion. My question back to you then is, faith in what?
Well, say for example, there is a family that are Christian, all right?
Right. So their faith is in God, the Christian God.
So let's just say their faith is in Christian God. Let's just say, for example. To be fair, it doesn't have to be Christian God. It could be any God, right? Or any faith, right?
Mm-hmm.
But like I say, for some people, praying or trying to follow the rules of a religion, let's just say, for example, the Bible. Now, hugely controversial, okay, I know. But for some people, there is comfort in that. There is something about living your life in a certain way, trying to follow the 10 Commandments, etc., etc. And that doesn't have to be, like I say, it doesn't exclude the fact that you may need professional help.
No.
But it can be used alongside.
If it's not weaponized, yes. It is both and, not instead of. But it is mostly weaponized because, again, you look at the structure of Christianity and how much it relies on oppression and people being in need of something. So there is not an affirmation of self, i.e., God has equipped you with everything you need to navigate this life. And when time comes and you need help and you ask God for help. So, for instance, I saw a Facebook post the other day from someone I know who does go to church and was talking about a suicide that happened recently in his district in Jamaica. And the person was being prayed for a lot by the church, and he was on suicide watch by his family, but somehow managed to successfully commit suicide. And his question was, where was God? And I said, are you for real? So someone is suicidal and you don't think get them professional help.
But that's what I'm saying. That was instead of. That's what I'm saying.
Exactly. But the question was, Karen, where was God, as if God was supposed to magically come down and heal the man's mind, rather than God send us the right therapist, send us the right treatment plan, send us the right intervention. But we're literally praying for magic, and magic doesn't happen.
That's also ignorance, though, Kay, isn't it? That's ignorance, isn't it?
And yet these are educated people, believe it or not.
They can still be ignorant. Education does not give common sense, unfortunately.
I know.
So they're two different things. So, for example, you can have a family who they could have prayed for him. They could have prayed for him and they could have sought professional help. They could have got him a therapist. They could have talked through, his suicidal thoughts. They could have perhaps treated whatever the trauma was or whatever it was that was keeping those suicidal thoughts going. But they didn't do that. Instead of, they prayed. Now, dare I say, common sense tells me that wouldn't be enough.
But that's what I'm saying. Faith in what? We can use the word faith broadly, but what are we having a faith in? And I feel that that's not defined or clear in Christianity. Is this kind of mystical, magical, undefined thing that keeps people trapped in hope, trapped in, I don't have to do anything because God's going to do it for me. I don't have to intervene because God's going to intervene. I'll give you another example. And it happened in my district in Jamaica. A child, I think might have been 2 years old, watched his father murder his mother in the most brutal way. And is displaying severe mental health issues as a result, including psychotic episodes. And that child has not been offered any help, but the churches have been to try and pray and to, there's a spiritual dimension to it, and I don't minimize that. But there was a lot of spiritual activity in the home where the murder happened. And the unresponse was to try and get rid of the spiritual activity, but not support the child who had witnessed this most heinous crime.
But I think there just isn't enough awareness then of professionals who are able to assist and offer treatment in the event of, a child witnessing a heinous crime and therefore are traumatized. So as an island, then we need to rate, well, not I say we, I use the royal we.
Yes.
The colonial we.
Yes.
But awareness needs to be raised so that people understand that, there are healthcare professionals that they can call upon.
But I'm telling you, Karen, they would rather the stranglehold of Christianity. That's why I called it a stranglehold. I was very deliberate in my choice of words. It's not a faith that is freeing and respectful of or lived human experience. It is a chokehold. So then you have nowhere to go. I do think we need a lot of awareness, and I do think it is changing on the island, because I've spoken with a couple of other professionals, but also people on the island who've said, you know what, we would love some counseling, but we would never go because confidentiality would not be respected. I will talk to a counselor who probably goes to church, and my business will be out there. And Jeffrey's nodding. So again, this is where religion for me upholds systems that harm us.
Well, I don't know if it's religion or that people are ignorant. I can't blame the religion for that. I have to blame that. So, for example, I went to the family recently, right? And it was a professionals meeting. So the social worker was present, and we recommended that the parents undergo some therapy, marriage guidance counseling, because it was impacting the children, right? Parents said, we wouldn't look to a company such as Relate. So just for you, Jeffrey, Relate is a marriage guidance counselling service that we have in the UK. Family said no, they wouldn't be open to that, but they would be happy to go to churches and counselling. Now, that is, for me, that's ignorance. Because yes, you could go to the church, but it would only kind of, they'd have a particular viewpoint, wouldn't they? Because it would be religious-based. And what we were suggesting is a counselling service that wasn't based on religion. It was just, if you want to go to church as well and pray, absolutely. But you can do the two simultaneously. But to have one over the other, I think, is what wouldn't be helpful.
But also, Karen, are they trained? You're going to the church for counselling. Are they trained? Have they been through the training? Say, I've been through.
Absolutely. And I would imagine... No. Absolutely not. Yeah. So
it's the blind leading the blind.
If I could interject.
Sorry, Jeffrey. Go ahead.
Oh, that's fine. I was just saying what you just mentioned about ignorance and religion. To be fair, they both kind of feed into each other. The less ignorant people are, the less the stranglehold, as cases of religion, holds people. The more you know is the less you rely on these systems of faith that you don't truly understand. And in reality, religion is just used as a tool by our colonizers to help us to, stay in line, because that's our introduction to Christianity. That was Jamaica's introduction. Or slave masters brought that here as a means of holding us accountable for things that they wanted us to be accountable for. Why would you disobey a slave master when they are so close or equal to this high being, this God? Your slave masters are your earthly examples of what Lord should be. So you can't defy them. You can't question them. You can't go against their will. And that is the ignorance that keeps people from seeking the mental health that they need. From actual professionals, because we're reliant on these systems of faith. No, they do have their place, as you were saying earlier, they do provide some level of comfort. But if it is that this is the only help that they can get, they're going to remain ignorant to all other opportunities. And they're going to keep going through their same storms of mental health crisis, because they are, as you said, ignorant, and they rely on the systems of faith. I think if we wanted to see true change and we wanted to see more availability of mental health professionals, we're going to have to stop recommending or pushing persons towards that direction to, go and pray. And more practical and reasonable solutions can come up where Karen and Kay can actually help some people and not, say, go and pray it away. So their ignorance, it's coming from somewhere. As Kay was saying, it's really a part of our colonial programming. It's coming from slavery. And it's really sad.
I can't tell you how many times I've been told I'm going to hell because I have let go of that of Christianity and what it was put in place for. It was hugely effective, and it still is very, very effective in keeping us oppressed, not free mentally, as Bob Marley sang. Emancipate yourself from mental slavery. And I roll with it now. At first I was grossly offended, and I thought, you know what, I have been to hell. It's not what you think it is. But if me letting go of that is equal to me going to hell, I'm taking hell, because I don't want to go to heaven with people like that. Straight up, I'd be in the wrong place.
But I need to add something. Okay, so I've also worked with several families who recommend and practice with their children alternative well-being strategies. And they're not based on Christianity. They are based on religions of their home countries, offerings and sacrifices and so forth, which is not Christian, right? That, in my opinion, is equally as unhelpful to mental health than Christianity is. So what I'm trying to say is I don't think it's just Christianity. I think it's ignorance, like I say, right? And it's not having the understanding that there are healthcare professionals now. And it's also trust. I think people don't trust us. I think trust is a huge thing. They don't trust medicine. They don't trust, research methods. They don't have a trust in what we do. And I do a lot of work with families to try to build that trust. That's a huge part of what I do. Parents come in, no, thank you. I mean, before I started, a lot of parents had such a poor relationship with the school, completely disengaged. Like I say, I've had to work very hard to build that sort of, strong relationships, strong bonds with parents. So I think it's lack of trust, lack of education, a lot of ignorance, stigma attached to it. So yes, Christianity, but also, other faiths.
So faith-based healing, when it comes to mental health, is probably iffy. Get the right help. There's only so much you're going to apply from a system that is going to help someone heal mentally. Jeffrey, I wanted to ask you a personal question, but if you ever felt at any point you would like to see a therapist, would you go?
Honestly, yes.
Good.
I would.
Yeah.
I would. I know that modern medicine exists for a reason. Properly trained mental health professionals can actually quite literally save your lives.
Yeah.
So I definitely would see a professional if I was going through that kind of crisis. I've been working really hard though at reprogramming my brain from how I was raised to be. It's really tricky, but I've been working on it so that I can stay further away from that cliff, so to speak, and falling off, and where I have no choice but to seek help. So yeah, if I needed to, I definitely would see a mental professional.
And if your friends who do open up to you, or people who you say, "Are you okay?" and then the floodgates open, if you were to suggest to them, do you think they would go, or would they laugh you out of town?
Well, I'll tell you what, just last week, someone came to me while I was at work, and it was this guy. He seems fairly young. I would say maybe he's in his 20s, like me. And he was really in bad shape. His clothes are all torn up and dirty, and he kind of had a bit of an odor that was off-putting to a lot of people. So everybody was just kind of, shying away from him. But my friends and the people I work with, they expect me to be the one to speak to him because that's what I do.
Right.
So naturally, of course, I spoke to him. I didn't have a problem. And he told me he was in an accident earlier this year and he's really suffering. He's really close to a mental breakdown.
Post-traumatic stress.
Yeah, he was really close to a breakdown. He was homeless. Everybody in his family kind of shunned him. And he was just out on the street. He didn't know where to go. And the way he was speaking to me, I could tell that he has something there, but then he would have his little moments where you can see, there he goes. It's like he drifts off into his own little world. I don't know if it's a coping mechanism or what, but he holds himself together. And I really was, I didn't even feel bad for him. I felt a little proud of the fact that he knows where he is. He knows that he needs help. He came by asking for monetary help, albeit he wanted money, but I started directing him towards getting mental help. So he was saying that he would like some money from me. And I was telling him, I understand where you are, but money isn't going to help you. Not right where you are. You need a mental health professional. So I got on the phone and I called a couple of people and I know a doctor or two. And I was lining up a meeting for him so he can go and see a doctor and then he can then be referred to the mental health department from the Ministry of Health and get him through that channel so he can then, if he does need to be medicated or if he needs therapy or whatever, he can start on his path to recovery. And since the first time I saw him until this week, I'd give him some fare to get home. I'm not giving him any money to go and, like help him to get home. And then he would call me and I would speak to him on the phone and then I'll tell him where he should go and whatever. And I hope I haven't seen him since over the weekend, but I hope he's doing okay. And yeah, that's what I would do. If somebody needs help, I think the least that I could do as a human being that cares is help. It's not my place to laugh or judge. Just help as much as you can.
That's awesome. Yeah. That is really awesome.
That is amazing. And I love your approach to it because you were thinking long term. Yes, you could give him money for right now. And yes, he could buy some food and he could probably sort himself out. But that would be short term. You were looking at the long term and I really commend you for that.
Yeah.
I think that it starts with people like you, Jeffrey, to be honest. I think you've already started that ball rolling. And actually, I know that you're not a mental health professional, but even having conversations with other men about your experience and how you feel and, your kind of viewpoint, I think that would be hugely impactful because I think you could possibly, raise awareness for a lot of people. In the barbershop, for example, imagine having this conversation somewhere like that where, there could be people who are struggling. And those are the kinds of places where people have conversations and men talk to other men and that kind of thing. And I just think you would be so helpful in that sort of, environment. So
they call the barbershop the ancestral meeting place or ancestral water.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And maybe things like that, if we had people who were even semi-trained to some degree in those kind of environments, I think that would be a really good starting point.
Yeah. Karen, I was wondering when Jeffrey's going to start his counselling training.
Absolutely.
We can direct you. You're still a businessman and you will still run your business, but you have a gift.
I don't know. I never thought of it that far. I don't know. I like talking to people. A lot of times it's not about anything in particular. I just like to have a conversation that's meaningful. I have a young guy. He's 18. I don't know why, but he just started, following me. And he told me that he looks up to me. So I would just have some conversations with him. And then I would say, I'm going to go and get something to eat. And he's like, oh, can I come? And then he'll just be behind me walking, going wherever I am. And I come back and he's just there and he'll just spend the entire day around me and I'll talk to him. And he'll tell me about his childhood growing up, and I would have to help him differentiate between trauma and abuse and an actual learning moment, because he grew up traditionally. So, his parents used to beat him and stuff, and he would be telling me, but after that beating, I really learned how to not be ungrateful. I'm like, no, you that's not about being ungrateful. You learn how to be afraid of your parents. You were afraid of the consequences. And that's why you didn't do it again. It's not because you learned, you're just afraid. And he would just go on and he's like, but what about this time? But what about when this happened? I'm like, no, bro, I'm sorry to tell you, you are thoroughly abused and traumatized. You're really traumatized. And so I have some people who I pull into my little circle, and I will talk to, and men or women, I'm not really biased. I just, whoever I can talk to, whoever I can learn from, whoever can learn from me, whoever, once we can have some beneficial mutual exchange, or if I have something that you need, or if you have something that I need at the time, then we share it,
Yeah, that is so wonderful. We do know from child development, and yes, a lot of psychoeducation needs to happen, Karen, around child development for our community, so that they understand that children are not adults. They are children. Their brains aren't developed like adult brains. They will do childlike things. They're not naughty. They don't need to be battered every time they make a mistake, because they are children. They are supposed to make them. So even in terms of their own emotional literacy, to understand what they are thinking or feeling and how to manage those feelings. I'm just thinking, Jeffrey, if from toddler stage you are withdrawing or you're withholding comfort, how does then said child grow up to be able to support his partner, his peers, his siblings, when he has been taught he cannot have his feelings? So my last and final question to you is, what do men do with their feelings that they're not supposed to have, but we very well know they have? What do they do with those feelings? Feelings of sadness, anxiety, stress, being frightened, feelings of love. What do they do with the range of feelings?
Well, just let them be. If you are sad, you're allowed to be sad. If you're happy, you're allowed to be happy. If you're angry, feel angry. Don't act out on it. No, whatever angry thought or aggressive thought comes to mind, it's not good to always act out on your emotions, but let your emotions, give them some room. Allow yourself to feel what you feel. And that's only natural. You shouldn't have to hold in or bottle up your emotions. That only leads to some catastrophic event. That it leads to some sort of blow up. Talk about how you feel. I think the best thing most persons can do, especially men, black women, find people that you can talk to, that you can confide in, like seriously, people that you trust, and talk to them. Somebody who actually cares about you. It doesn't even have to make sense. A friend of mine the other day, he was so mad. He literally was just cussing. I think it was one word in every sentence that wasn't a curse word. He was just cursing. He just cussed. He was just really upset, and he was cussing, and he just needed to get it out. He needed somebody who would listen to him and not judge him. Because that's another thing. People feel judged way too often.
Yeah.
And they just hold it in.
Yeah.
So let out your emotions, feel how you feel, cry if you have to cry. Crying is
that's a big one.
Girly thing. Yeah, crying is not a girly thing. Not only girls cry. Everybody is allowed to cry. That's why we have tear ducts. That's why it can come out. It's not selective to one gender. Everybody can do it. So, you shouldn't feel afraid of judgment from people who don't really matter to you to all that. In some ways, you shouldn't be so afraid of what people might say. because people are going to say something anyway.
Anyway,
so
absolutely. Do
you. Your life, your health comes first, and you just have to prioritize yourself, prioritize your family, and do what you need to do to keep yourself sane, happy, and healthy. That's it.
Well, it's a lovely way to end our episode. Thank you so much, Jeffrey, for joining us. I have thoroughly enjoyed talking to you. Okay, would you like to?
Jeffrey, honestly, what a pleasure. What a pleasure to have you. I feel like there could be a part 2, purely because you are the one who has stepped forward from our community to have a chat with us. I feel like I have had some ideas as well, Karen, about how to support our communities to step away from ignorance, but also to allow ourselves both and to have our strong faith and to accept help when we need it. Absolutely. So any questions, comments for Jeffrey, please drop us an email at beautifullymelanatedpodcast@gmail.com. We have an Instagram page. It is at beautifullymelanated. Do follow us. We have a YouTube page as well. And in time when this episode goes up, I will ask Jeffrey to supply a picture and you can see him then. And no, he's not single. And and I'll put the link tree to all our social media pages in the bio for this episode. But for now, Jeffrey, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, guys. Thank you. I appreciate what you're doing here. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Take care.
All right, take care. Bye, guys.
Beautifully.